this is It's Mental Podcast. Today we have Mel on our show again. She interviewed me in the episode of Moni's Mental Health, which she did a great job, and I think I never got so much compliments in my life before. So if you missed that episode, please check that one, and I ask Mel to introduce herself.
Thank you, Moni. You're too kind. So it was a pleasure to interview you. It had been a while. I'm Mel. Mel for Melanie. I am a trained journalist. I then turned event manager, intern mentor, was an office manager for a while. And I quit my job a couple of years ago and have been going through a transition phase. I think I would describe myself as someone who's creatively and socially pretty active and diverse. And as we were talking earlier before the podcast, a bit of a multi-dimensional person. I'm from Argentina. I was born there and moved around quite a bit when I was growing up. I lived in Canada, in Germany. In Germany, I lived in Bonn and in Berlin, where I went to school, and then went back to Argentina for uni and came back to Berlin about almost 7 years ago now. So it's been a journey.
We had like 2 guests on this podcast from Argentina. I heard that in Argentina, people really, it's a very common thing to do therapy, and it's very popular there. What's your experience with the topic there?
So therapy and psychoanalysis in general is quite common in Argentina. I actually went to therapy the first time in my life there as well. That's where, I had one therapist, and then I had like one block of therapy with her at one point, and then another block later on. And it's, I think, related to the fact that the culture in Argentina is a lot about sharing. People talk a lot about like their feelings, what's going on in their life. It's generally like a society that's very open in that regards. People are very enmeshed in each other's business, friends and family, all like. So I think therapy becomes kind of like, it's a very natural thing to go to the therapist. You don't have to be really depressed or anything. You've got a thing that you maybe realize your friends and family can't help you with, so you just go to therapy. Or you just want to rant about your parents or something, you know.
Wow. And how old were you when you first time went to therapy?
I think about 23.
23. And how old are you now?
32.
Okay, so it's 9 years in between. Are you doing therapy the whole time?
No. No. So I did therapy when I was about, I think it was 23, because I was having a lot of issues with anger. And I was having like anger management problems and kind of just a lot of like violent outbreaks, and I would get very, very provoked. At the time I was living in my family home still with my mother. And I would get triggered a lot very easily and have these kind of very aggressive reactions and these like throw kind of like tantrums, and which by all means they weren't justified, but I see now looking back, like it makes sense to me why they were happening, because there was a lot of feeling of powerlessness. But basically that relationship with my mother, it was very toxic at the time, and it was causing a lot of like havoc with me. And I had finished uni. It was kind of that moment of like, I did school, I did uni, I did the things, I got the grades, it's all good. I had the boyfriend and all that, and then but it was kind of like, pitfall into darkness of like uncertainty. What do I do now with life? Where is this supposed to keep going? And all I knew was that kind of I needed a break and I needed some space away from home, and I wanted to do a trip. I had never traveled on my own, so I wanted to give myself that. So as a preparation for going on a journey on my own for the first time, which for me implied like being independent and literally just making decisions for myself, that was a big deal to me. I'm also the youngest of 4 children. So yeah, the topic of like independence was something that I was struggling with, like the stepping into my power and feeling like I was capable of doing that. So I started going to therapy to work out this connection of like the relationship with my mother in the family home, the feeling of powerlessness that came to it, why that was leading to anger, just kind of how can I like learn to be myself and create and like give myself what I need. And then when I came back, so I did the trip for 3 months, and then I came back, and pretty quickly I went from August to November, and then in November I came back, and I pretty quickly realized by December like I was really depressed in Argentina, and I didn't want to go back to the society that I had kind of like taken a breather from for a few months.
So you didn't know you were depressed?
No.
The trip made you realize?
The trip made me realize how things could be for me when I was somewhere else and when I was on my own and when I was away from the chaos and the loud voices of the family home and of the city. So Buenos Aires is a very loud city. It's actually called Ciudad de la Furia, so the city of fury, because there's a very, very intense energy. It's kind of like a bit like New York in a way. I guess I've never been to Sao Paulo, but people have said that there's a similar kind of energy. It's very, very intense. There's a lot going on all the time. It's kind of a city that never sleeps. People are very loud. There's lots of buses, trains, all of it. And even though we lived in the suburbs, that society was very much reflected in my family home with how my mother's personality was, my brother as well. Like they're very, they have like big hearts, but they're very, very loud people and very opinionated. And at that time, I was struggling a lot with my identity. I felt very disconnected to the country and the culture, and I felt like after trying for four years, it just wasn't clicking for me. Like I didn't feel like I belonged, and I couldn't kind of hear my own thoughts and have my own peace of mind within that structure. So when I left and I finally had that, it was incredible. And I realized, oh wait, I feel so different. Like instantly, I got on the plane, I got off and I arrived in New York for the first time. And it was crazy. It was like within the first few weeks, the first week actually already, it was like I was a different person. Like I felt really, really myself, and happy and joyful and explorative and just all this like juicy vitality of like, oh yeah, the world, let's do it. That was flowing through me, and that had been kind of dying for a while. I was just really frustrated and angry all the time. So when I came back, it was pretty clear very quickly, like, oh no, I can't stay here. Like, I can't go back to this now. So I started up therapy again in January, and I also decided in January that I would move back to Berlin.
Back to Berlin?
Yeah, because I'd gone to school here and graduated and everything. Like, I had all my friends here.
So you grew up in Germany?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in Germany for 10 years before going back to Argentina.
Okay, so until 10 years old, you were in Germany? From
9 to 19, I was in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah. This is why the disconnection to the country came. Like, I left the country when I was 3. I went to Canada for 5 years. I came back when I was 8. I was in Argentina for like maybe a year, and then we left for Germany.
So you were never really native there?
No. But my dad was an Argentinian diplomat. So we actually represented the country outside of the country. which I think made the whole identity thing even more complicated.
Represent Germany or represent?
Argentina.
Okay.
So that was difficult, like coming back, which also wasn't my choice. I did not voluntarily move back to Argentina after school. That was a turn of life that took me there. So it was challenging. Like, I wasn't aware of the fact that I was depressed. I had a lot of depressive episodes and periods when I was in Argentina. But they kind of came and went, and I was in uni, I was quite busy, there was like a lot going on, it was my early 20s, so I think like I wouldn't really go into it so much. Yeah, like it wasn't classified as that, and it was more of this anger thing that was there. The depression came later. That actually came in Berlin to be like diagnosed. But basically I left, I decided in January 2015, I think it was. Yeah, January 2015, I decided that I was going back to Berlin, to my other home, basically. And in April, I left. And I was here like on the 28th of April. So it was quite fast. And in that period, I did therapy again to work through the feelings that came along with that, of like abandoning my family. There was a lot of guilt attached to my wanting to leave. There was a lot of guilt attached to the feeling of, why can't I make this work with Argentina? Like, why can't I make it work here if I am from here? And I have possibilities, I have a network, I have my family, I have people that love me, but somehow it just, for me, wasn't at that time, it wasn't working. And it was also this implication of leaving the family home for the first time ever when I was 25 years old, which is older than most people when they leave their family home. So, you know, having to confront myself with the reality of, okay, you're going to leave the family home, you have to pay your bills, you have to find a job, you have to pay rent, you know, like, you have to work through your bureaucracy, health insurance, like, how the fuck do I do all this? I don't know, I'll manage, but there was definitely this like necessary period of going to therapy. But I think it was only actually, then I didn't go anymore. I didn't attend any therapy until September 2020. So that's actually when I also went, I like deep dived into therapy in a really different way than I had done.
And this time, is it a psychoanalysis or CBT?
No, I did behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm now about to finish the like second like roundabout of sessions. I did from November 2020. Yeah, right. September was when I decided I had to go to therapy. And then November was when it actually started, because it was a huge waiting period. And I did from like beginning of November till like April or something like that. I did like, 6 months through, and then like finished basically. It was like released.
Was it every week?
Yeah, and sometimes double hours. And then I was like released and everything, it was like, okay, I'd gotten a lot better. I had gone and been diagnosed with mid-level depression, which was basically this rage that I had had in Argentina, that at some point I kind of, I suppressed it a lot, and it was like not the kind of emotion that I knew. It's not that I didn't know it was there, I knew it was there, I just didn't know how to express it. And it wasn't really welcome also in the society that I was living in here. Rage is a very common known emotion in Argentinian society. Like, people get angry all the time, and they yell, and they fight openly at the dinner table and stuff. And then they kind of kiss and hug it out, and everything is fine. Whereas in Anglo-Saxon culture, I think the norm is more of like, oh, they're angry. Like, it's kind of not a very welcome emotion. So that, unattended after many years, turned into depression. And so I had stopped therapy, or finished therapy basically, like in April, and then I took it back up again this year, So April 2021, and then then I took it back up again a few months ago, because I could feel the depression was coming back, like it was creeping back up on me.
You tried both psychoanalysis and behavior therapy. What's your feeling about the difference of the two?
Well, in Argentina, I didn't do psychoanalysis per se. Like I did, so like psychoanalysis would be where you do like 4 times a week. This is the one that you mean, right? Like
like they analyze your dream and...
Yeah, you mean the more like Freudian approach. Yeah. No, I didn't do that. I have friends that are doing that actually right now. No, I have the word in German, Tiefenpsychologie. So it's like psychotherapy, psychotherapy, and the other thing is behavioral therapy. Yeah. So I did psychotherapy when I was in Argentina, and behavioral therapy when I was here. I found behavioral therapy to have more of an effect with me, in the sense that because it's more linked to what's happening to you right now and the behaviors you're acting that are happening to you right now, you do go back into the past. Obviously, you look for where is this coming from, but it is more focused on the present moment and how can you deal with the present moment in a way that you can actually change the pattern. Whereas to psychotherapy, in this more traditional sense, was more about figuring out the why, but that didn't give me so many answers in terms of what to do now. It was kind of like, okay, I understand these things are happening to me, but I have no idea how to do it differently. So that changed, but I feel like this time around, actually, now that I'm ending the second round of therapy, I feel like it wasn't as efficient or effective as it was the first time around, but maybe that's just changes in my perception or something. I don't know.
And with the 2 rounds of behavior therapy, do you have some takeaways? Like, what make you feel, okay, this helped me the most?
Yeah, so one thing that really helped me a lot, and I realize it's actually the thing that I value the most about my friends and partners and the people that stay in my life for a long time, was that the therapist would definitely call me out on my bullshit. So like she would hold me accountable when I was kind of going into this place of like, it's everybody else's fault and all these things are happening to me and blah, 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 like just kind of getting into this place of like, not to unvalidate my emotions, but like when I was getting to a place of pointing the finger at everyone, but not owning up to, okay, what role am I playing in this? How am I creating these situations for myself? Because I am a co-creator of my life. So where am I causing, where am I creating or provoking anger in other people, or where am I not being sensitive, and where am I not upholding my own boundaries, like these kinds of things, like where am I not speaking out, just how am I my own like my own worst destroyer in a way, and she would call me out on that,
she would say directly?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. At one point she told me that, like, I think my first session with her, that was actually great. That was kind of like the moment that I was like, I think you should be my therapist. We had like a test session and I went in, shared a little bit about myself. We talked and she threw this thing out in the room where she was like, yeah, I mean, I feel like you're a pretty dramatic person though. Like you're pretty dramatic, and I feel like you're overcompensating a lot with like you're overcompensating a lot of negative emotions by trying to be like overly charming and nice and sweet. And I remember just sitting there and being like, oh, why yes. That sounds perfectly correct. You should be my therapist, because in 45 minutes, you got it. Like you've just seen right through my bullshit, called me out on it, and I can work with that. What I can't work with is if I don't get anything back from the therapist. So that I found to be very helpful. Like when I was kind of going into this place of like putting too much responsibility into other people's hands, which is exactly what creates a feeling of powerlessness. And that's what creates your feeling of depression, is like, I have no power over all these things. Everything is happening to me. Everything is terrible. But when you start to realize how much you're playing a role in that, and you realize, oh, I can actually change that. I can't change any other things, but that I can do. That's actually very helpful. And I noticed that had an effect also on my friendships, of like learning to value more the people who will call you out than the people who maybe will never say anything to you. So that's one big takeaway that I took. And then I think another thing that helped me a lot, but it's still to be determined how much, because I have yet to get into it a lot, is the fact that I think a good therapist is, or should be, capable of witnessing you as you are and with the issues that you're presenting to them. But they should also be capable then of steering you into where the issue is really at, like into the deeper stuff that you don't want to get into because it's too painful. And that was a really great takeaway. Like that was something that she helped me with quite a lot, which is to realize that there was a lot of things that I was relating always back to the mother side. But it turns out it actually has a lot more to do with the father side, and that I had been avoiding kind of looking into that because my father passed away when I was 19. So it's sometimes harder to like look into like the dirt with someone who's deceased than with someone who's alive. Because at least with the person's alive, you can still fight about it and hash it out. Whereas to the other thing is like, okay, how do I even process this now? Or how do I get down to it? So those are two helpful things. Yeah, definitely calling me on my bullshit and steering me into the deeper end.
You said you started therapy in 2020, and what happened in 2020 make you fear this time?
So
besides pandemic?
Yeah, besides pandemic. The pandemic wasn't actually what got me into the therapy. I think the pandemic obviously contributed in any way, but personally, I had been working at a company for 4 years, pretty much since arriving in Berlin. And it had been a very challenging time for me, especially the last year and a half there, where I felt like I was under a lot of pressure. And I had kind of gotten really off my path. And then I quit my job in 2019. Was kind of exploring around. I was in this kind of new, fresh phase. And then 2020 kind of rolled around. The pandemic hit. And a lot of the things, I was an event manager, which I had planned to do freelance. That obviously couldn't happen. And there was a lot of the projects and the things that I wanted to do just weren't viable with the pandemic. And in that time, I had also met someone who didn't live in Berlin and who kind of developed a very special relationship with that I'm not going to really label because I can't label it, but it was someone who's special to me still to this day. And basically, I had been 2020 during the pandemic. I had taken a lot of time to myself. I had started also a spiritual journey in 2019 and had discovered meditation and was kind of going into that realm as well a lot and spending a lot of time just kind of with myself and getting into spiritual practices and stuff. And then basically in the summer of 2020, I took a little trip to go visit this person, which was very challenging. It was very difficult. I fell and I hurt myself. I like busted open my eyebrow. Yeah, I fainted like the first day that I was there, and like I fell on my face, and I had never fainted before, so it was like a very strange situation. And I fell and I cracked open my right eyebrow, and I had to get it like glued back together, and I had a massive blue eye, and like I was really weakened, and it was tough. It was like a difficult situation. He handled it really well, all things considered, but it was emotionally a lot. And then I came back, and then kind of like a month later, I went to a festival with some friends, and the first, like my eye had healed. Like the first night of the festival, I tripped and I fell and I bruised, like I basically cracked 5 ribs. Yeah, I like I like full on fell on my ribs with like all my body weight, and like I cracked my like my 5 lower ribs on the left side, and I was immobilized basically for a while. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't, I was smoking quite a bit of weed at the time. I couldn't smoke any weed. I couldn't smoke because I could barely breathe. It was so painful. Like it was the most.
Could you eat edible?
Dude, I don't even know. I was in so much pain. Like you can't even believe it. Like it's the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. Like it was bad. Like moving in any direction, bending over. I couldn't go grocery shopping because I couldn't carry a bag. Like I could not do a damn thing. Coughing, sneezing, felt like you were literally gonna die.
How did you survive?
I don't know. I basically just like, it was a really terrible roommate situation as well at the time. Like my roommate and I were not getting along at all. Like there was just a lot of things that condensed, and basically, like essentially after sitting with myself and not being able to do things, and this situation with this guy was also, I was starting to like go in a different direction, just because it also felt very unrealistic because we didn't live in the same place, and there's just a lot of our shit got brought up, and it was just kind of clear, like, okay, I don't think that this is really going to be happening now. It was that moment of like, okay, and the pandemic is still coming, and it's autumn, and oh my God, I like am so uncomfortable in my living situation. Everything hurts. I am just so clueless and powerless right now as to what in the fuck I'm supposed to do with my life. Like how am I getting myself out of here? I have no idea. And things with my family were also a bit distant, and there was just like so much confusion, and I had like, it was that moment where I had to admit, like, I need help. I'm not going to get out of this one alone. This is not going to happen for me. I don't have the capacity to do this. And if I don't get help, then I like don't know what's going to happen. It was definitely what you call dark night of the soul. Like it was pretty dark for a while. Like
and
a long
that's
time.
when you decided you have to do something.
Yeah. I had a few conversations with my brother that were like just me in complete tears. Like it was just a full meltdown situation. There was just nothing. I couldn't think of anything. There was just no way that I could think of any way forward at all, because it was just, everything was falling to pieces, and I didn't really know who I was. I was really confused. The world was really confusing also, but it was mainly more internal. But it took also like a month and a half or 2 months, I think, until I actually got my first
That's very
therapy.
fast already.
Yeah, that's pretty fast
because
for pandemic times.
German, right?
Yeah, so I had the advantage of being able to have a German therapist. Yeah, that helped a lot, because I think for a lot of people that was really messed up. Like, and I never realized, I think, until that moment, how urgent mental health care really is. Until it's that fucking urgent, until you're in the emergency and you're like, what do you mean? Like I remember calling, I telephone terrored. I basically was like, okay, I grabbed this list that my friend gave me of all of these therapists that she had called, and I just went through every single one of them, and I just called, like, I think I called like 20, 30 therapists or something, until one of them gave me an appointment. But it was like every time somebody was like, oh, we don't have any availability, or we can give you something in like 4 months. And I was like, are you fucking joking? What? No, like I can't wait that long. What? it became really clear to me also with other friends that were struggling as well, like telling somebody who is at that point that they're seeking help, telling them that there is no help available, that just makes it worse. Because it just makes you realize that you're fucked. Like you better find a way out because no one's coming to help you, kind of situation. And I think that's not a good place for our system to be at. But I also acknowledge that it was at a time of a pandemic where I think everything was overloaded in that sense.
And how long took it for you to feel, oh, it's working?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I feel like I did a lot of things proactively at the time, apart from therapy, to get myself up and off the ground, which some of them worked, some of them temporarily worked. But I would say maybe like 3 months. 3 months, yeah. I think like by the time my birthday in February came around, like I had moved apartments, I had worked through some closure in that relationship situation. I had adapted my practices a little bit. Like there were conversations I had with the family. There was a lot that I did like proactively. I also got back to working on my projects, which I hadn't done in 2020. I put myself into a like career like coaching program for 6 months, and I kind of like sought out. I started dating, you know, like I kind of did things very, very proactively to like to kind of slay the dragon, the depression dragon.
What worked? You said that lots of things worked. What worked the best?
Changing apartments. Yeah. Changing apartments. Living in a place that was warm and like warm, not only in the literal sense, but like that felt warm in my heart where I felt harbored and safe. Having a safe environment is really key to your mental health. Like for anybody who is struggling with that, if the factor of your environment, of your home is your root. It's where you go to rest. It's where you go to, you know, be in your cocoon and heal from all the crazy shit that's happening outside in the world, you know, and in the internal world anyhow. If that factor is not given, I've experienced this several times already, like having a bad living situation with people that you don't connect with, you don't get along with, or that maybe even worse, maybe even like bully you or I don't know, like you fight with or whatever. That part is probably the place that you can start working on to get the best effect, the best domino effect afterwards, because changing your environment changes a lot also in your day-to-day routine. It changes a lot of like, you know, the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything changes, and that it gives you like a kickstart to your system that can then travel through into other areas of your life and give you like inspiration and kind of new energy. Whereas if that's not given, you can try to change so many things around that. But if your home environment is the place where a lot of your burdens are coming from, that's a tough one. And I don't know, I think it's particularly ironic in my case because I've been moving countries all my life, always in the same family home. But then I moved to Berlin in order to find a little bit of peace of mind. And then I moved 6 times in 6 years. Different environments, different homes, different roommates. And yeah, only now I'm really, really understanding the value of finding a home and the right people to share that home with as well, and how much that will support your mental health in the long term, no matter what comes afterwards. You know, because you'll have the safe harbor to rest, and the people to lean on a little bit, you know, when shit gets tough.
Yeah, and I also realized to make the home beautiful and cozy, it means a lot for the mental health, like tidy, clean all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's depending on personality, but I definitely think that putting energy into, like, being conscious of where you are and putting actual dedicating time and energy into creating a space that feels inviting to you, that feels warm for you, is really important, because you are in that space. The morning when you wake up, first things you see is your home, it's your room. When you go to bed, the last thing you take in is your home, it's your room.
Yeah.
So if that place is cold, let's say, this is actually stuff that I learned from like feng shui, and like there's different practices as well, but just a general, working in at an agency as well, like that was very into like aesthetics and design. I learned a lot of things like that through like office management, but it's basically the dynamics of a space really alters your mood. So the plants that you have, the colors, the fabrics, the textures, those things can either be cold and maybe conducive in terms of productivity, but might not be the best place for you to like sleep in, or for you to have a good cry in. If you're going through a hard time, it doesn't even have to be expensive. Get some pillows, get a friend to lend you some pillows, some cozy blankets, something fluffy maybe, if that's your thing. Get a couple plants, maybe some candles, anything that for you, or something for the wall to hang on, anything that for you feels like it'll give you a feeling of, okay, I can like breathe out and rest here for a moment. Because I think I don't know how your experience has been with this as well, but like, I think the difficult part about mental health is that it's very exhausting. At some point you just get really tired. And you don't really know how to explain to people that you're tired of not doing something. Or like you're tired of not having answers, because people just look at you like, maybe start doing something, and in that moment you think, I wish I could, but I can't. Because I'm too tired from trying to figure things out. And then, there's only so much you can do to like get yourself out of there. And I think something like, okay, maybe changing your environment, redecorating, that's like a good place to start, doing something small to like feel like you're being productive. That was something that came out in the discussion panel that we had in the Mental Health Festival, like do something with your hands and do something with your environment.
Yeah, like to do anything is good, like anything to bring yourself a little joy.
Yeah.
I think to put the money, put the effort to really invest in the living space is really, really rewarding. To have a tidy, like a clean, like a cozy place makes so much difference.
Yeah, I remember, it's crazy because as you were saying this, I was remembering the home of an ex-boyfriend of mine that like I was together with for quite some time in Argentina, and I remember that being the thing. Like I would spend sometimes like a full weekend at his house, and I remember that being the thing that really irritated me when I was there, was that it was not cozy at all. There were no pictures of anything. There was just white walls. There was nothing. There was no color. There was no plants. There was nothing in the apartment that felt homey to me. And that was strange, because I remember always like it really made, it didn't seem to bother him, maybe because that's what he was used to, but I remember it having quite an impact on me, that like it was like even when I wanted to stay longer, I remember sometimes it'd be like, oh, will you stay in like another day or two? And I'd be like, no. And it was because I think it was genuinely because I didn't want to stay in the space, because it just didn't feel inviting to me as like a place to stay longer, It's like if the difference between going to a hotel that's like nicely decked out with like all these, just little details and things that make it just look like a home away from home, versus like a really basic motel, just like the bed and the white walls. You're like, this is fine, but you know, it's not going to be like where you want to, you know, lay your foundations.
Yeah. So the second time you start the therapy this year, what happened? You say you start to feel a dip again.
Yeah, so after the first half of the year of like working in this co-creation program, working on projects and kind of going through like a reinvention phase with myself and also going through several spiritual practices and taking down new routes, basically. New roads. In the summer, it was like the program came to an end, and like, you know, this kind of group support that I had had for a while, as well as this like training course that I did in like shamanic arts that was focused on like the dream world. I had been in a few like containers with like other people, so like community spaces, that had given me a sense of like that I'm not doing things for myself, that I'm doing them within a group and also kind of for society, like for other people. Like I wasn't doing the things for myself. I discovered over the summer when that stopped, I kind of went straight into doing another job coaching to test this one project that I had done. That one was just one-on-one for about 6 or 7 weeks. And then when that ended and I was kind of on my own again, then I kind of started like noticing that I was kind of burnt out and I was tired from like working on projects and doing practices and this whole thing of like, okay, trying to figure it all out and how do I move forward, and especially this thing of like creative projects. I'm sure you know this, Moni, of like, how do I earn money with the things that I love to do, with the things that I'm good at and the things that I know can make a difference in society. But like, fuck, it was like going to one job coaching after another, always with the answer of like, okay, well, yeah, you can't really make money off of this. And that was starting to really demotivate me, and I was feeling quite burnt out. I was feeling like burnt out of doing inner work, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and I think I just didn't and don't, well, I don't know, maybe I will in the future, but just at that point, I realized I didn't have the same resilience that I used to have when I was at work. Like I would just get tired more easily, and I think I was more sensitive this year to a lot of things, including my own emotional state. Product of therapy, like knowing, okay, I'm coming up against my boundaries. I should probably respect that and take a break now. And then that break was like, I decided to take like a month off in August and just take like summer. And then by September, I had been dealing with like this decision of, do I go home? Do I go travel next year? Where do I go? What do I do? You know, like towards the end of this year. And I was just getting quite exhausted because I realized I didn't have any answers. And I was kind of circling back to the same place that I had been at before, which is, right, you've moved forward, you've evolved in a lot of ways, you've worked on a lot of things, but you still feel really powerless. And you still feel like you're carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders on your own. And you don't want to do that anymore. But you also realize you still don't really know how to ask for help properly. And like there was just, I was dating a little bit. And that was also, it was just kind of exhausting me. Like I was coming up against a lot of things. Every time something kind of joyful or nice would happen, something new and inspiring, I would kind of go down that road and then find myself coming up against all my shadows and my triggers and all my crap that was not processed yet and that was not looked at. And I was starting to feel that typical thing that I think happens to a lot of people, is like you start feeling like a failure. You know, you start feeling like you're no good. You can't do this anyways. Why the fuck keep trying? Like maybe you should just stop trying. Like,
When you hear those voices, what do you do?
Well, I journal. My journaling practice became much more active last year. So I started journaling every day. I journal, maybe talk to a friend, smoke weed, that sometimes helped. But basically nothing. I would just kind of sit with it and try to understand, like, why do I feel this way? Like, where is this coming from? And that's the thing that I think was why I went back to therapy, because I was like, oh, this is like, there's something here that's like, I don't understand where things are coming from. I don't understand the root. And my body was also, again, like acting up, you know, I was having a lot of physical pain. And that was kind of adding on to this sense of like hopelessness, of like powerlessness, like I'm not going to make it, this kind of thing of like, how the fuck am I going to make these amazing, ambitious, creative, crazy projects happen that I want to make happen so badly, but my mind and my body are not supporting me on this journey, you know, like I am feeling weak and tired and, you know, like not strong, not, I don't have my shit together kind of thing, you know. It's like I can how, you know, you can be Einstein, but like if you don't have your shit together, it's going to be really hard to like actually move into a place of action. So that's what was happening for me. It was like I was completely paralyzed, and that's the thing that I think I struggled with a lot in my life. It's like this inner paralysis of like getting completely overwhelmed, and then I get into freeze mode and I can't do anything.
Do you do sports?
Yeah. Did have like an active yoga practice for 4 years now, like almost daily. I used to play basketball in high school, but yeah, like now I've shifted practice doing more qigong. Like moving and exercise is definitely important.
Yeah.
But even then, even doing all that stuff, there was just kind of like, there were other things lying on the deeper psychological, energetic level also that were like blockages that were there, that was like, you're not seeing yourself clearly. You know, you're again not seeing the places where you're not holding yourself accountable for the things that are happening in your life, like, and that it's kind of up to you to change that. So yeah, I don't know. I was really, really feeling it coming on. Like I was noticing myself just more and more getting into that state of like, I can't make it. I can't do it. I don't know. I can't. I just like this, I can't thing. And I was like, no, fuck that. Like, I'll be damned. I'm not going through that again. I'm not like digging myself a hole and laying down in there again because I don't want to do that again. Like it was a rough year anyways. Last year was 2, so it was kind of like, nah, get the help before you're at the tipping point, you know, before it gets as dark as it did last year and years before that, you know. So I'm glad that I did. I'm still not sure how much it helped, to be honest, but I made decisions and kind of feel like I'm slowly unblocking things. It's a longer journey though. I mean, the journey to the self is never, it's like an ongoing quest.
That's of course true. We talk about the breakdown, the burnout, the deep, and Christmas time is approaching. I think this is the last episode of this year.
I'm honored to close it.
Yeah. I want to ask you, like, there are so many, like, negative stuff. If you look back, like, what are you grateful along your journey, like taking care of your mental health and making all the decisions?
Oh, I'm incredibly grateful. I'm grateful for absolutely everything and everyone who entered and exited my life since ever, actually. I think if anything, this journey has taught me to practice gratitude and like hold gratitude in my heart for everything that's happened in your life up until this point, the good and the bad, all of it, because they're all lessons in the end.
Were you always so grateful?
No, definitely not.
And what changed you? When will you change?
That's a good question. I think it was a gradual change. Definitely a gradual change that started happening around 2019 with a spiritual journey, with also understanding concepts of compassion and kind of acceptance for things as they are and all of that. But I would say this year, 2021, when I moved apartments and I just found myself in such a different place, and I had been so low. I think maybe it's when you've been stuck in like a dark storm for a long time, maybe even longer than you realized. Because the truth is that depression, that was the culmination. That moment of 2020 was the culmination. It had been going on the whole year. It's just, I was dealing with it differently. And it had been going on probably most like a longer period of my life. But I think when you've been in a really dark place for a while and you're feeling so hopeless and you kind of you put everything you have, every last bit of energy that you have into trying to manifest something for yourself that's different, that's better. And then somehow, by pure synchronicity and magic of the universe, so to say, it actually happens. And it's there, and you're in it, and you're experiencing it. And I had, like, the first 2 months I lived in this apartment where I'm now, I genuinely had, like, full days where I would just sit and cry out of gratitude because I was sitting in an apartment that was warm and it was so cold outside. And there was like a rug, and there was all of these like little elements that made me feel like I could breathe and I could just relax for a moment and heal. And then everything that came along this year of like, there were so many blessings, even with everything of the body, like every illness, every bit of pain, everything, it all has a lesson to it. There's beauty in it. It's just a matter of seeing it and appreciating it and knowing that beauty is not always, it's not unicorns and rainbows. Beauty can also be gruesome and dark, but it's still part of you being alive and feeling. And I think I think just this year became a much more important thing to me, and also gratitude for my roots, like the decision to then finally go back home, and go back home from a place of gratitude, from a place of appreciation for a country that, struggled with for a long time, and, an identity that felt very fragmented. Maybe appreciating that as well, and finding gratitude for that and saying, hey, that sense of fragmentation is actually what makes you unique. The different layers of your personality, the different spices and condiments that go into making you you. That's something to be grateful for. It's not something to reject about yourself. So
And in 2020, actually it's not even 2020. In 2021, oh my God, the years just went by so fast. So in 2021, what's the most impactful breakthrough or learnings you had on your journey?
2021. Most impactful
for your mental health,
for my mental health. Learn to set boundaries. Learn to set boundaries. It doesn't matter how small the boundary is or how irrelevant it seems, set it anyways. You can always retract on a boundary if it feels too harsh in the end, or if it doesn't feel right, or for whatever reason. But pay attention to your emotions. Smoke less weed, pay attention to your emotions, and notice for yourself, notice everything that's happening. Notice every ridiculous, egoic thought that's flipping through your brain all the time, but also notice what's happening in your body. You know, like notice when you're getting triggered, notice when your heartbeat is rising, your palms are getting sweaty, you're having anxiety. Notice when you're crouching and you're feeling small and you're tensing. Notice all the stuff that happens. Pay attention. And when the things that are happening are very clearly telling you, like, you're not okay with this, this is not, this is not vibing with you for whatever reason, you don't necessarily need to understand the deeper reason for everything that happens within you. That's where psychoanalysis, in my opinion, can get a bit intense.
Yeah.
You don't need to know the deepest, darkest reasons for everything. But you should definitely take action when you're feeling certain things. If you need to say stop, say stop. If you need to say this is too much, it's too much. Why? It doesn't really fucking matter in the end. It's just because it's what you're feeling in that moment, and it is all right for you to claim that space. I think that's the most important part. That, and love yourself as much as you love your friends and your people in your life.
That's hard.
It's hard. It's really hard. But I really, 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 really love my friends. And like, I have a lot of love for my family as well. Like, I'm not so much for myself. We're working on it. It's getting better. But yeah.
Cool. So
what are your takeaways, Moni?
For me, like, wow, I learned so much this year. I think the most important one is probably that I realized the harshest comments of myself are actually from myself. And I realized I project so much of the criticism of myself onto others, and I fear this kind of aggression from others, but actually they are all from myself. So now I'm able to distinguish what is actually people's judgment on myself and what is my own judgment on myself. And instead of having this rivalry relationship with people around me, now I'm more clearly know actually I'm just having a difficult relationship with myself and how to deal with that. This is really, really a big learning. And I also learned that mental health is really like gym. Like, you cannot only take care of it when you are sick, or when you really need sports. You need to do it every day for the rest of your life. But if you do it every day, then when you really need it, you see the power.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a practice. So I think I'm really, really, really happy for 2021. I made so many breakthroughs. Like my life situation, the connection I have with myself and people around me has like improved so much. I really, really think like 2021 is my best year so far. I never feel so free, feel so loved before.
I think that's incredible, because I feel like that's been a thought that's been on my mind the last few weeks, which is that the last 2 years have been challenging, yes. But especially this year also feels like, for longer periods, this year has felt like it's been kind of laying the foundation for this kind of massive year of exploration and new beginnings that is to happen, that is like coming kind of next year. And in that process, I realized something quite similar, is that, you know, even when you're struggling with mental health and you're going through difficult times, the level of joy and appreciation that I've had for the small, simple moments of beauty in like the day-to-day has been way beyond the places, like the way that I used to see the world, like just so different. It's just so much more awareness and being present with like really small things, you know, just tiny pieces of joy that like made such a difference. And I think that's kind of the things that like the foundations that then you take with into you, you know, like into the next years, because it's the kind of practice, once it's set, you won't kind of stop doing it. Yeah.
2022, I'm looking forward. You?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. So this is the last episode of 2021. I'm grateful, like now I have like a real podcast, I can say, after 1 year of working on it.
Absolutely. How do you feel as a podcaster?
I don't see myself as a podcaster, but doing this podcast is also a process for me to understand lots of things, like for example, to understand that I cannot be perfect. I cannot compare myself with like a Joe Rogan podcast or their kind of how do you say level of production. I also realized that it's fine, like it doesn't sound professional, but it's authentic. And I also realized, okay, I got burned out like after a few episodes, like edit all those video and do promotion, and it didn't get much feedback. Then I got upset. Then I realized, oh God, like why I'm putting myself there on YouTube and all this editing is not my. It takes so much energy and I don't enjoy it. It doesn't pay back a lot. Why not just do everything minimal? Like I don't expect being perfect, but just doing minimal and in a sustainable way, and it gives me maximum amount of like pleasure, like actually talking with people, learn from people, and don't worry about how many audience listening this episode.
Yeah.
And once I made that breakthrough, the project became so much more pleasant.
Yeah.
And I actually start to have regular, like a stable audience, to really put my effort on things I enjoy the most and cut the rest.
Yeah, because I think an audience will also respect more a product that comes across as authentic and not planned so much, especially in a world that is functioning around social media, which is all edited.
Yeah. So like I think that's also is a very good mindset. On one hand, like I really don't want to put effort on all those like more polished side. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, it's a sign that my podcast is authentic. People will realize it's just to talk me out of the perfectionism, because it's the biggest enemy for me to move forward.
Yeah. But also, I mean, if it should be a thing for you next year, you say, okay, I do want it to be a little bit more professional. You can always, you know, like ask someone who's, you know, you can ask Sen, who's more like versed, maybe like, oh, how do I like throw in this or that thing that I want to have, if that feels like something that you want. But I feel like you don't need to do that.
No.
There's,
I think
it's great as it is.
Yeah, like this is just for me, it's a practice, like also mental health practice for me to accept this and to really see, okay, what is brings me most value, what makes me happy, and how to make myself enjoy the process instead of stress myself out and give myself so many negative comments. So I am really, really looking forward to 2022. I think 2021 I have built a very good foundation, and 2022 I think lots of things will accelerate, and
Yeah, definitely.
looking forward.
Definitely. It's going to be a very different type of year, I think,
Yeah.
than the last two.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this thing that you said also. I'll be thinking about that, like of the walking away from perfectionism and just focusing on what's the thing that's going to make you feel good about what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a downfall for me as well. I'm just getting tripped up by like, it's not perfect, so it's terrible.
Like
no.
perfectionism like kills creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So that's this episode. Now I finally have my Patreon page. So if you enjoy the podcast, for us as cheap as €3.50, you can sponsor me on Patreon. So have a look. Also, besides that, I'm also still doing the Berlin Mental Health Festival. The next session we'll have is in end of February, and this session will be all about anxiety. So we'll have a comedy show about anxiety, what anxiety is, what it feels like, and also other program all around promoting awareness for anxiety. So check it out. You can follow us at Berlin-mental-health-festival.com, or you can go to monijang.com. You will find the information. And what else we have? Yeah, sponsor me on Patreon, and I hope you have a great new year, and see you 2022.
Yeah, enjoy the end of this year.
Enjoy. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you for having me.